Changes for Molly. Chapter 3. The New Molly. Sunday night, Jill and Molly began to work on the new Molly. Molly didn't even have to remind Jill of her promise. After dinner, Jill said, "Come on, Molly, let's go up to my room." "What are you two drips up to?" asked Ricky. "None of your beeswax," answered Molly as she followed Jill upstairs. Molly sat perfectly still on the stool at Jill's vanity table. Jill draped a towel around her shoulders and undid her braids, brushing out the tangles with long, smooth strokes. She took a few strands and wrapped them around her hand, trying to make them curve under. They just flopped. Molly sighed. "See," she said, "it's hopeless." "No, it's not," said Jill. "We'll just set it in pin curls. It'll be fine." Slowly and patiently, Jill twisted strands of hair into circles and pinned the curlicue circles with crisscross bobby pins. The curlicues were so tight, Molly's scalp felt as if someone were pulling her hair. The bald spots in between the pin curls felt bare and cold. But Molly didn't dare make a peep of complaint. First of all, Jill might get mad and stop. Second of all, maybe it had to hurt for it to work. Jill was quite expert. She held the twisted hair with one hand and opened the bobby pins by pulling them apart with her front teeth. Molly watched her in the mirror. Dad was right. Jill was very pretty and sophisticated looking. "Jill, how did you learn how to do all this stuff?" asked Molly. "Oh, my friend Dolores taught me how to set hair ages ago," said Jill. "Tilt your head a little bit forward so I can reach the hair near your neck." "I don't mean just how to set hair," said Molly. "I mean, how come your shirt always stays tucked in? And how come your elbows aren't scabby? And your socks are wrinkled just right? And how did you learn to look so sophisticated like Dad said in his letter?" Molly was kind of afraid Jill might laugh, but she didn't. "I don't know," said Jill. "I guess it comes natural when you get older." Molly sighed. "If I wore your exact same clothes, I still wouldn't look grown up." "You can't make it happen faster than it's going to happen," said Jill. "And you shouldn't try anyway." She met Molly's eyes in the mirror. "Sometimes I'm sorry because I think the war made all of us grow up too fast. We had to kind of hurry into being serious, and I feel cheated because Dad missed seeing us through some of the parts of being kids. He wasn't here to teach Brad how to ride a two-wheeler or help me with algebra. I think you're lucky. At least you have a few more years of being a kid with him." "I never thought of it that way," said Molly. "I want Dad to think I've changed and I'm not just a dumb kid anymore." Jill thought a moment. "Even if you don't look different, you have changed," she said. "Really?" asked Molly. "I have. Like how, for instance?" "Well," said Jill, "the most obvious thing is that you want to be different. Gosh, you used to always want everything to be the same as before the war, which was really childish because things can't ever stay the same, especially when there's a war. Remember that fight we had about decorating the Christmas tree? You just wouldn't admit Christmas was going to have to be different with Dad away. This year, you are more willing to change." Jill opened up another bobby pin with her teeth and then went on thoughtfully. "And you don't clomp around the house the way you used to all the time. You're quieter. And I thought you grew up a lot and learned to think about other people when that English girl Emily came to stay with us. You were very generous with her. You definitely act more grown up now than you did before." "But I want to look grown up," said Molly. "Okay," Jill laughed. "That's what we're working on here. But I still think Dad will mostly care that you act older. You really do act more mature." "Mature?" Molly was terribly flattered. Mature was one of Jill's highest words of praise. The opposite, immature, was her harshest criticism. Molly sat up very straight and made her proud that Jill thought she was mature. "You're done," said Jill. "Try not to wiggle around too much when you sleep or the bobby pins will fall out." "Okay," said Molly. "Thanks a lot, Jill." She walked slowly down the hall to her bedroom, holding her neck stiff as if she were balancing a bowl of water on her head. Suddenly, Ricky jumped in front of her. "Help! Save us!" he shrieked. "It's a porcupine monster from outer space!" He clutched his head and pretended to faint from fear in the sight of her. Molly was about to sock him. Then she thought of what Jill had said and stopped herself. She just kept walking inside. How immature, leaving Ricky slumped against the wall behind her. Sleeping on pin curls was like sleeping on thorns. Molly tried putting her face in the pillow, but then she couldn't breathe, and she tried wadding up her pillow under her neck instead of under her head, but that made her neck hurt. The pins seemed to find a way to dig into her scalp, no matter what she did. The next morning, Molly's head was groggy from no sleep. Her scalp was sore, her neck was stiff, she had funny red wrinkles on her face, and marks from the bobby pins pressed into her cheeks. But it was all worth it, because when Jill took the bobby pins out, Molly's hair was not straight. "Oh, Jill," exclaimed Molly, "it's wonderful." Jill pursed her lips and studied Molly's hair with a critical eye. "We'll try it a different way tonight," she said. "This is okay, but it's more ripply than curly." But Molly was very pleased with her new look, and at school all the girls oohed and awed when she pushed back the hood of her jacket. She hadn't worn her hat. She was afraid it would crush her hair. So her ears were pink, and with both cold and pleasure when Susan said, "Gosh, Molly, you look like a movie star." Linda didn't go that far, but even she had a compliment. "If you took off your glasses, you'd look at least 12 years old, maybe even 13, she said seriously. All day long, Molly was careful not to move her head too much. Every few moments, she'd reach back and touch the ripples with her finger to be sure they were still there. Her hair stayed ripply right up to the time for tap dance class. When Miss Lavanda saw her, she smiled. "Why, Molly, don't you look darling?" Molly's heart lifted. This was the week everyone got to try out for Miss Victory. That day, Allison Hargate did the special dance first. Linda and Molly watched as Allison walked up the bleacher steps to take her position before the music started. The Miss Victory costume fit her perfectly. Allison's hair was so blonde and her eyes were so blue she seemed to glow and light up the stage even without the spotlight shining on her. "Gee, she looks great, doesn't she?" whispered Molly. Linda shrugged. When the music started, the girls who were stars and stripes sang and danced their parts, without a mistake. But Allison started the solo too late and had to hurry down the bleacher steps, so she was out of step with the music. Her feet seemed to get all tangled up, and she danced on. As she danced on, she did better, but she seemed very glad when the music was finally over. Linda poked Molly and rolled her eyes. "She may look good, but she sure can't dance as well as you can," she said. Miss Lavanda made them all do the whole dance over and over while the girls tried out for the solo. Molly danced better every time. Having the ripples bounce up and down on her back felt wonderful. There was only one problem. As she danced, she got more sweaty, and the ripples began to unravel and droop in a discouraged way. By the end of class, the beautiful ripples had pretty much disappeared, and Molly was left with a scraggly mess of straight, sticky hair. Unfortunately, the same thing happened every day. It didn't matter what Jill did to curl Molly's hair. She tried twisting it around rags, rolling it up in hairnet, gooing it up with cream, drenching it with hair lacquer. When Molly woke up in the morning, she would have waves, ripples, and even curls. But as soon as she danced, her hair would straighten itself out and hang as limp as wet noodles. In the war against her hair, Molly was losing, and she was sure she'd never get to be Miss Victory unless she and Jill could find a way to make the curls stay curly. Finally, it was Friday night, the night before Molly's turn to try out to be Miss Victory. She and Jill were desperate. "Okay," said Jill, as if she were a general preparing for an all-out attack on the enemy. "There's one last thing to try, the wet hair method." Jill wet Molly's hair, twisted it up in tight pin curls, then wet it again. Molly had to sleep with a towel over her pillow. Her hair was so wet. The next morning, Molly went off to tap dance class with her damp hair still in pin curls. "Don't take the bobby pins out until the very last minute," Jill warned. It was a bitterly cold day. Molly was afraid the pin curls would freeze solid as she hurried along the sidewalk. Her whole head felt like an ice cube. But when she got to class and carefully took out all the pins, her hair had dried and she had glorious wavy curls. Susan helped her fasten the Miss Victory crown on her head. "Oh, Molly," Susan gasped, "you look absolutely perfect." Molly looked in the mirror. She couldn't help smiling. She did look perfect, except for one thing, her glasses. She took them off and put them inside one of her regular shoes. She knew the dance so well she wouldn't need those glasses anyway. They belonged to the old Molly, not this new sophisticated Molly dressed in the gorgeous sparkly Miss Victory costume. Molly took her place at the top of the bleacher steps as the music began. Everything was a little fuzzy in front of her, but that just made it easier to imagine there was a big crowd watching her. Molly pretended that in the very front row, smiling and clapping, was the most important person of all, Dad. At exactly the right moment, Molly danced down the steps in perfect time with the music. She danced better than she ever had before. It was as if the music was in her feet, making them light, moving them along through all the fancy steps, without a bit of effort from Molly. After the dance, all the girls clapped and cheered for Molly. Linda and Susan clapped the loudest. Well, said Miss Lavanda, it seems we all agree that Molly should be Miss Victory. Congratulations, Molly. You did a fine job. She handed Molly a small plaid suitcase with a silver buckle. You may use this suitcase to carry the Miss Victory costume back and forth from home to class. Take good care of that costume. You've certainly earned the privilege of wearing it. All the girls clapped again, and Molly heard Susan cheer. Hooray for Molly! Molly is Miss Victory! Molly thought it was probably the most perfect moment she'd ever had in her life.